This
We call to
conference
order.
will now be recorded.
Call to order the meeting of the Harwich Conservation Commission, Wednesday, March 31st, 2021. This meeting is via remote participation and pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open law meeting, General Letters circa 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's order March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Harwich Conservation Commission on March 31st, 2021 at 6:30 p.m. will be conducted via remote participation. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and/or parties with a right and/or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Harwich website at www.harwich-mass.ma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so via a recording on demand on the Harwich Channel 18 website or on our Town of Harwich YouTube page. So with that, I'll call the meeting to order. First item on the agenda of the public hearing is a discussion and possible vote to release the Main Street cranberry bog for agricultural purposes. The premises are located at 374 Main Street, North Harwich, Barnstable County, Massachusetts, shown on Harwich Assessor's Map 47 as parcel A-10, containing 33.6 acres total, which comprise of 10.7 acres of bog, 2 acres of cedar swamp and pond, 21.6 acres of upland, more or less, and being further shown on the plan recorded in the Barnstable County Registry of Deeds in Plan Book 460, page 55, and described in the deed recorded in Barnstable County Registry of Deeds Book 10792, page 257. The current lease that we have on the bogs is set to expire on November 12th, 2021. However, at their meeting on March 24th, 2021, the Board of Selectmen voted to grant another year to the current lease. This would now make the lease set to expire on November 12th, 2022. And with that, let me ask, we have in attendance Leo Kapunas, who's the present lessee of the bog of this property. And if you wouldn't mind providing an update on the current status of the bogs, and then we'll go into future plans.
Okay, thank you all very much for hosting this evening and allowing me the time to speak with you about this subject. One of the things that I'm not sure if it matters or not, but I believe my lease expires August 17th, 2021, this coming August, but I may be wrong. If Amy said it's November, then it's November. But to my knowledge, we originally signed the lease on August 17th, 20 years ago. And the reason why I know that is because it's my birthday. So it was a happy day for me 20 years ago when I signed it. And I don't have the lease in front of me, but I can't imagine they extended it 3 extra months, 20 years in advance. So I think the date ended on the 17th of August. The gentleman was correct. The town of the Board of Selectmen voted to extend the current lease for 12 months. That wasn't, it was something that I had mentioned, and I believe it was, I did not see the selectmen's meeting, but I believe it was just discussed because of the current situation with COVID and all the other things going on in the town. All parties have not really been prepared to go forward with anything at this time, and they thought that they giving us all a year to work some stuff out would just be beneficial. So I am prepared, and I have not yet, as to this date, signed an extension yet with Mr. Powers, but I do plan on doing so as soon as he has the documents prepared. For those of you that don't know, I don't know how much of history you want to give, or you want me to give, or how much you want me to get into this. But the property was put out for lease 20 years ago. There were numerous bidders on it. It came down to really 2, myself and Mr. Lindsay Strode. My lease to the town was a guaranteed cash payment it was not subject to the amount of cranberries grown or production on the property. So as much as my memory is failing, to my recollection, 20 years ago, the finance heads of the town thought it was much better to be involved with a guaranteed payment every year, regardless of whether I grew, had a good crop or a bad crop. I do lease the entire 33 acres. I think that was a smart thing for the town to do then, and I do believe it's the right thing to do as you move forward. I have grown cranberries there. I am certified organic cranberry grower. I am one of the few certified organic cranberry growers left in the state of Massachusetts. I would say that I'm probably not the largest, but I'm neck to neck with the other gentleman down in the Dartmouth area who has about 20 acres also. So as far as that goes, I just think it's good for the record to show that I am and have been a certified organic grower, and the entire time that I've leased the property from the town. Presently, the bog is being an organic grower. There has been a lot of hurdles that I've had to face. Weeds are my biggest problem. I venture to just tell you that anyone that's going to grow cranberries and try to grow them organically, that you're just going to lose acreage of bogs because you cannot find a decent herbicide, weed killer. I've tried a number of different things. I actually spearheaded the use of livestock on the bog to curtail, especially invasive species like poison ivies. We ran sheep to keep the grass down. We ran goats to keep the wooded plants down. About 9 years ago, the USDA decided that using livestock on the field was determined as an application of raw manure as fertilizer. So they changed my abilities to use livestock during certain times of the year. It's 120 days prior to harvest. And as you all know, especially here on Cape Cod, if harvest time is in October, 120 days prior to that is the time that weeds grow. So it didn't stop me completely from using the animals, but it did curtail the benefit, really, of using them. As far as, just to bring you up to date, we have run a lot of livestock out of that facility. I've raised pigs up there. I am a USDA approved distributor of meat. I am not a slaughterhouse. We do not process meat on the property. I have contracts with a USDA slaughterhouses, and I bring the animals to them live, process the meat there, bring them back in refrigerated trucks, and then we sell them from the farm through the farm stand. So, or I deliver them directly to the end user. The couple of things that I just want to point out that has made it difficult for me as a leasee of the property, a leaseor. Originally, when I took the property over, I was in the feed business. I sold grain and livestock feed and livestock supply. At that time, there was a gentleman here in Harwich who ran Harwich Pet Supply, and I also sold dog foods too. And he made a valid point that he did not want to see someone be able to lease town land for a reasonable price to run an agricultural operation out of it, but then to directly compete with a other business that had to pay a higher rent, higher lease for his property, and sell retail goods out of it. So although you won't find it in writing anywhere, I did at that time agree that I would not do anything on that property that was in direct competition with local business people. So at that time, I stopped selling grain and selling feed, which, by the way, was a pretty lucrative business for me. I own Cape Farm Supply for, I guess, going on 40 years now, or 38 years. So the last 20, I have not sold dog food and grains. I since have gotten back into the hay business, but I do not do that on Main Street. I do it here at my own property on Factory Road. So I am back in the hay business. Why is that a valid point? I just think it all coincides with what really town-owned land should be used for, and how you should move forward if you so choose to decide to lease it, either as a general lease again, or if you whatever you decide in the future to do with the property. I see now on our screen that Lindsay Strode has joined the meeting, and Lindsay was the other gentleman who was bidding on the property at the time 20 years ago. I won't get into it because I'm sure both of our memories are probably gone by the wayside now. But Lindsay was going to run kind of a landscaping business out of there, and that was one of the key points that a lot of residents did not feel comfortable with, because again, they wanted to be used for agriculture. Even though landscaping and growing landscaping plants is considered agriculture, there was a little bit of an outcry from some of the local landscaping companies that made a living on selling and growing that kind of thing. Anyhow, let's fast forward to today. After 20 years of my life on that piece of property, I stand before you now. I spent a lot of time there, 20 years. A lot has happened in 20 years. I had a child. She's 22 now, or will be in June. A lot has happened and gone up and down. The business thing that I realized now, after 20 years later, is that I have nothing to prove for my 20 years there, other than what I made on a yearly income from growing and selling the cranberries. I really have no asset, because you people own the property. You own the land and you own the property. So if I were to die tomorrow, my daughter would inherit my machinery and equipment, but there would be no land value because it is a lease. And because of the municipality situation, there really is even no way to have her have stepped in and continue the lease, because the lease is to me and me personally. So that's kind of a downside to a farmer leasing municipal land, because at any time during the lease, if he happens to pass away, he basically has nothing, and the family just has to clear out his stuff. So now, as I'm 65 years old now, and I am looking forward to the future, and what I have seen happen here in the town of Harwich with agricultural land, especially cranberry bogs, top of the list. But also, you have to know that my dear friend Jimmy Marceline and I ran a cattle business out of a piece of property on Queen Anne Road and the corner of Route 124 and Queen Anne Road for 30 years. In his passing, that land has now reverted to a couple of duplexes, and I'm not sure what's going to happen to the big cow pasture. But this town has, I really think, has suffered a lot in the loss of its heritage and in the loss of really having agricultural operations here. So I was tasked myself by saying, what can I do to offer the town something? Could I lease it again for 20 years? Absolutely. Would I lease it again from you for 20 years? Sure, be happy to. But if I die in 10, what's going to happen? Town's going to end up probably not finding anyone else to lease it. The land will go as the rest of this land that you have now has gone, which is either barren, and I'm not even going to say back to its natural state, because that would be a compliment. It's neglected is what it is. And it would just add one more piece that's being neglected, overrun by invasives and just not used for anything. So I came up with a pretty, I think, excellent idea. And I've approached the town administrator and I've approached some of the selectmen. Have not done it at a public meeting yet, but I'm prepared to do that now, because the town administrator and I have worked out kind of a plan to move forward. I would like to see the town turn this property over to the tech school here in Harwich. I'd like to see you do that through a intermunicipal agreement. And I'd like that intermunicipal agreement to be basically for perpetuity. There would be no 20-year limit. There would be no 10-year limit. There would be, this is what you guys are using it for, and as long as you use it for these agreed terms, it shall be under the care and custody of the tech school. I have sat down and met with the tech school. Bob Sanborn and I want to put together and have put together a plan to create an agricultural education center. That's going to do two things. First and foremost, and I'll get it out of the way quickly, it's going to allow the tech school to submit an application to become a full-blown agricultural tech school, or an ag school is what they call it. I believe there's only one other high school like the tech school, which is a licensed ag school. They like that because that opens them up for a lot of funding, and it opens them up for a lot of other classes that they'll be able to offer their students. Part of that agreement, though, the property needs to have 24-hour care and maintenance. 24-hour, that's actually in the regulations. So that means somebody from the school staff has to be the person who's going to be responsible for that property. The tech school has already agreed that they will pay me a very, very nominal fee, $1 a year, whatever it takes to make it legal, to be their manager. Subsequently, with that agreement, I have agreed that in my passing and in my estate, all my possessions will be then granted to the tech school and to the Agricultural Education Center. Now, let's focus on the Agricultural Education Center for a minute, because I covered the tech school stuff, but I think Bob Sanborn would be probably, I know he'd be better off explaining you or answering any questions on that aspect of it. As far as the Agricultural Education Center goes, though, there will be a board that will be created. There will be a nonprofit organization that will be created that will oversee that division of the tech school. Any monies that want to be donated to the running of the Agricultural Education Center could go directly to a separate account for that purpose. Any funds that are derived from the goods produced on that property will go to the Agricultural Education Center. That nonprofit organization has to have a board of directors. I have reached out to 6 what I feel very prominent individuals here on the Cape that would be very qualified to serve on that board, and they all are very willing to do so. I won't name any names tonight, but there's lawyers, politicians, and people who are just well known in the community, and certainly some people with an agricultural background. Once the Agricultural Education Center is established, the school and I will work out a program that are different programs that we plan on offering there. I know everyone's first question is, why the hell do you want to teach a bunch of kids how to grow cranberries? And I see Alan Hall's joined us here too. Please don't be insulted when I say this. There's no young kids that want to go to school to learn how to be cranberry growers. There's just not enough money in it, and it's just not a lucrative business anymore. It's not my intentions, nor is it the intentions of the tech school to teach children or young adults how to grow cranberries. However, we will use that to teach them other fundamentals. First and foremost, water and soil analysis. We'll teach them about forestry, especially on this particular piece of property. We have 10 acres in the back that has been neglected over the years and left in its natural state. Being able to take kids through there and teach them about forestry maintenance and management, land management. I'm also working with 2 veterinarians that are going to help us put together a veterinarian tech class, where we will discuss animal husbandry, and we will actually raise livestock there. Invasive species, another kind of thing that we'll talk about and get the young students involved in. These are all just some classes that we plan on offering there. The benefit to the town, as far as I'm concerned, is I think that you are going to have a infinite amount of workforce and young men and women that are going to learn about something that I think has gone pretty well neglected here on Cape Cod, which is land management. How do we actually do things in the best interest of the land? Right here in Harwich, we have an excellent conservation trust. They own a number of pieces of property. I'm sure they will benefit immensely from being able to have this education center there. We plan on working closely with them. I've already talked to Mike Locke about offering programs not only to the students, but even to adult programs throughout the year. One of the interesting things about the crops and things like that is that, you know, the school's only in from September to June. So that's why they need me, number one. As the cranks go, the running of the pumps and the getting ready and the opening up for the season will all be done and worked with the students. The summer seasons, there might be some applications of different pesticides and herbicides that may be put on. Students might be able to come back and get a little credit if they want to work through the summer. But more importantly, the harvest season is perfect because I already work very closely with the tech school. They help me sort my cranberries. They have not been able to harvest them too much because I usually get it done by myself, but all the dry harvested berries, they come and they help me sort them, and then they sell them right there at the school. So we're already kind of had a little bit of interaction with them with the cranberry business. There are certain facets of this piece of land that I believe will transition very well into Christmas tree farm. Christmas tree farm, I think, would be an excellent plus for the tech school students. The majority of the attention that Christmas trees require are definitely during the school year. Certainly you want to make sure that they're getting adequate water through the summer, but pruning and taking care of the trees themselves is really a spring and fall, lot of work in that time of year. More importantly, though, is the harvest of those trees. Once again, school's in session during Christmas time. So to have a nice Cape Cod Tech Christmas tree farm where you'll be able to come pick your live tree and students will cut it down and it'll go on the books to be replaced next year. Christmas trees run about a 7-year cycle. So a lot of this stuff is going to take a lot of time to take off. I mentioned a little bit about animal husbandry. That property has a barn on it. It was in very bad repair when I took the property over. Many of you will probably go there now and think that it's in bad shape now, but I have to tell you it's savable. It does need some money put into it. There's one roof is done, the other side needs to be done, but I have all the metal roofing for it. So it's not that it is a large expense to do so. But out of that building where it could easily run 30 pigs, once again, going to have to work it a little bit different, but we'll probably buy the pigs in the September, October season, go through the different classes and things about animal husbandry and raising them, and about 6 months later, they're ready for slaughter. And we'll load them up and take them down, and again, the school will still be in session, so we'll be able to benefit from not only knowledge, but you see the whole beginning and results for the students. I could go on and on and on about my ideas for the property, but the main thing that you have to understand, because this is the big decision you have to make, this will be a movement that will hopefully put this piece of property in a preservation, agricultural, environmental management track for perpetuity. It's not just offering it to me for another 20 years. It's something that I think that will last, hopefully, as long as the tech school's here. And, you know, let's face it, you don't really hear schools going out of business. So the tech school is doing very well. And as long as we keep getting kids here, I'm sure we'll always have them associated with it as we move forward. Your next options, I guess you're faced with 3 options. This one is the new idea, and this is why it's, I believe anyhow, the selectmen have decided to extend the lease. I think they want to look into the municipal agreement. I've already had my attorneys look into it. It is a doable thing. Joe Powers and I have discussed it, as I said earlier, along with the superintendent of the tech school. So that's one avenue that you can consider going. Second avenue is just to put it out for an RFP, and because you have to as a municipality, put it out for 20 years and see if you get some other bidders in there. I will definitely be bidding on it, and I would hope that at that time a little consideration would be given to me, hadn't been there for 20 years too, rather than giving it to somebody new. But I guess we'll have to determine that when we see how many people want to bid on it. And then the third thing is do nothing with it and let it just go as everything else has gone in this town. Completely neglected, unmanaged, and I just don't think is the right move. So I don't know what more you would like from me this evening. The only other consideration I would throw into the Agricultural Education Center would be that you consider, along with the town, to turn this property care and custody over to the Agricultural Commission. Presently now, the town does have an Agricultural Commission, but from what I understand, it doesn't have active members. However, the state has ruled that, like the Conservation Commission, the Ag Commissions can hold property and control property. And I think for perpetuity, that would be an excellent move. I think it would definitely spark life, if you will, not only to the Agricultural Board, but to preserving agricultural lands here on Cape Cod. So with that, I'll be happy to open it up to questions.
Thank you, Leo. Ernie, I guess I'll take a shot. I'm back home, and so I'm going to read it from my computer, and we'll start to have some questions from the commissioners. First of all, I do have a question up front for Leo. How soon could the commission see some of this in writing?
4 months.
Did you hear me, Leo?
Yes, I'm sorry, I said 4 months. Am I
okay.
still on?
Thank you.
Yep, okay.
All right.
We're actually
I
waiting
think
for
it will
lawyers.
be important, for us to, to vote on this, to have decisions, to get this in writing and take a look at it. So
Right.
I think tonight.
I'll tell you, Mr. Chase, we're waiting for attorneys. The town's attorney has to give us direction. The school's attorneys will have to review all that and make sure that it's acceptable to their board. And then we'll be making that proposal public. So it's not me holding up the in-writing thing, sir. It's definitely got to do with the town's attorney and how you want me to move forward with it, as far as if they do decide to put it out for a intermunicipal agreement.
All right. Well, thank you. Looking forward to seeing that. So for the commission members tonight, we're not voting on this proposal. It's been aired before us. So what we're going to do is have questions for Leo, for ourselves, and we'll have an open discussion. Then we'll also have asked for public comment once the commissioners have gone through their questions. So I think that's what we'll do. So we'll start with questions. Ernie, do you want to begin?
Yeah, thanks, Brad. Yeah, Leo, I got to tell you, I'm impressed with all the effort and thinking that you put into this. And my inclination is that this is an outstanding way to go forward with this. But and that being said, I mean, I went to a school in Ohio which had a biology field station, and it was one of the most popular venues or resources that the college had at the time, and still is, for that matter. And I see that also being an opportunity for Cape Cod Tech as well. The one question that I struggle with is, whether or not there's a future for agriculture in the historical sense here on the Cape. I just don't know. I'm not in a position to know, and you're probably better positioned for that to answer that question than I am. And it sounds like you're convinced that there is. But aside from that,
well, could I answer that one first?
Yeah, sure.
Can I just break in here for a minute because Stan has shared his screen and I don't think it's intentional. We're all looking at Stan's screen and I think you probably don't want us looking at your screen.
Oh,
Stan.
I didn't know what that was. Thank you.
But I think maybe I don't know whether I can turn it off, but.
Oh, it's a cat now.
There's Stan's cat.
Stan, you're muted.
Oh.
Is it all right now?
No,
No, I was still watching cat.
you need to turn off your screen share.
I don't know what's going on here.
I'm trying to figure out if I can turn it off.
Because I was trying to open my camera up and I got into the wrong place here. And I keep clicking on something. I'm going to go to exit the meeting.
Yeah, I think that's what you need to exit and rejoin, Stan.
Okay, I'll try.
Okay, well, while he's doing that, I think the
Sorry.
question was about my enthusiasm for the future of agriculture. Alan, don't get mad at me, please. There is no future for agriculture in the state of Massachusetts. I don't care what anybody tells you. That's absolutely not even on the table as far as I'm concerned, okay? I would like to continue the historical interest in cranberries and do what I can as far as keeping, the cranberry industry going here. However, it's not my intentions at all to try to teach young tech school students how to make a living in agriculture. But I want to use the agricultural exercises that we farmers do every day to teach the other things that they will definitely, absolutely use. Water quality, how things permeate through the soil, everything from fertilizers to any type of pesticides that we use, invasive species. I mentioned land management before. We are in drastic need of land management here on Cape Cod, if not the entire state of Massachusetts. So if a student does learn land management, they can easily be hired by a company or an organization like the Harwich Conservation Trust, who desperately needs land management input and help. So the curriculum that we plan on moving forward with at the tech school, the end result is not to teach young people to become farmers, but it's to use the farm to teach them the fundamentals of the other things that absolutely play in with farmers every single day. And I don't know how better to say that other than, even I know how a septic system works. I'm not a septic installer, but I know how it works because I know how things leach in the soil. So that's kind of our goal as far as keeping the Agricultural Education Center operating.
Has Bob Sanborn at Cape Cod Tech come up with any sort of a itinerary or?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Oh,
we've
yes.
worked
Okay.
out a couple of different things, and as I said, I've even got certain people on board that are already shown interest. And as a matter of fact, the 2 veterinarians that I have are very excited about the vet tech program. And the vet tech program, are they going to leave this education center and raise pigs? No, but in the vet tech program, they're going to learn everything there is about artificial insemination, to giving an injection, to finding out what's wrong with an animal. And it's perfect training for a vet tech.
Wonderful. Yeah, I guess when I asked that leading question about the future of agriculture in Massachusetts, I was more focused on a lot of what you said about things like the Christmas tree farm and land management and the invasives and all. I mean, obviously, we get people coming through with AmeriCorps that I think get some foundational knowledge with a lot of that. but to have a study, a program of studies that's focused on that, I think would be outstanding. So, yeah, I once again, I'll repeat my earlier comments that I'm really impressed by the proposal that you've made, Leo, and think you've put a lot of thought and effort into it, and you've got some good thinking on going forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ernie. I'll ask for comments or questions from John Ketchum now.
Yeah, hi. I guess I agree very much with Ernie. I'm very impressed by the work you appear to have done and the thinking that I'm sure is more than a year's worth of thinking that you put into this. And I'm very encouraged by it. I guess Brad asked for something in writing, but I would also like at a future meeting in the not too distant future to actually have some of the other stakeholders that you have identified and come and talk to us about the project. In particular, someone from the tech school and maybe Joe Powers or somebody come so we can so I at least can flesh out my understanding of what really is entailed here. And I guess I would also like to think more and understand more about what it really means about the future. You're suggesting putting it into the hands, I guess, of the tech school in perpetuity. I guess I need to understand a little more about that, but we have time, I guess, to go through those things and get ready for the detail, just come to understand the details a bit more. I guess I don't have anything else to say or any other questions at this point.
Can I respond, Brad? Oh, I guess Brad's muted. If I may, I'd just like to respond to a couple of things that I add. I'd be very happy, and I anticipate that we are going to have certainly the tech school and myself in front of you, the two main players in this. And obviously Joe Powers will be involved. I'm sure the selectmen will be involved. We're going to have many meetings as they move forward. But I think it was Ernie that mentioned about a college that he participated in at a time too. I also want to mention this evening that I have already been working very closely with the UMass Dartmouth too. And one other thing that we have been working closely on is pollination and pollinators. There are a lot more of natural pollinators out there than the honeybee. I never even knew that when I first got into this, but after my work with the UMass Dartmouth and identifying natural pollinators has given me a wealth of education in that area. And I have reached out to the school. They too have to make sure they have to see that it's in writing, but I'm sure I'll be getting letters of support from them for the concept that we will be including in the package. Also, the USDA, I work very closely with the USDA here, located here on Cape Cod. They have shown interest and will, I'm sure, certainly send a letter of support. And MDA, the Massachusetts Department of Agriculture, I still have a lot of contacts up there from my days at the Farm Bureau. And I was president of the Farm Bureau for 18 years. I'm sure you're going to see some letters and some interest to be involved in this project as we move forward from organizations like that too. So thank you. I just wanted to add that.
All right, thanks, Leo. Next, we'll ask for comments and questions from Jim.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I generally like the idea of the tech school using the property for an agricultural training purpose. I think that the details of that are important when we get into talking about land management, whether we're talking about ecological restoration or growing of native plants, teaching how to create landscapes that don't need large amounts of fertilizers and herbicides and whatnot, how to create and maintain a Cape Cod lawn, stuff like that. I anyway would be far more supportive of it if it was leaning in that manner, and that is something there's a very strong demand in the marketplace for on Cape Cod. I think that's pretty clear, just based on stuff that comes through the Conservation Commission. And that my other concern with the property, it is a environmentally sensitive property. It's part of the headwaters of the Herring River watershed, and I'd want to make sure those resources are well protected. If anything, that could be enhanced, I think. I mean, that could be, part of that whole program, really. But those are my comments for now, and we'll see how it goes here.
If I may,
Sure.
the things that you mentioned are absolutely essential to the future of this property. Again, I think that even the reclaiming and reverting back to natural kind of estuary would be a wonderful project for the students to not only work on, but show that it can be done and how it can be done. That's what's so perfect about this particular piece of property. There is one section of it which is actually a run-through bog, and the water does leave the Flax Pond and runs through that section and down into Link Thatcher's Bog and down into the Herring River. Not the Herring River, I'm sorry, it goes right out into the ocean. But that would be an excellent project, probably one of the first projects that we would take on. And once again, we're not teaching young adults how to be farmers. We're teaching young adults how to do a lot of land management. Resource protection would be the essential, really backbone of the whole project. That's the reason why this is the perfect piece of property for it. And I just think that all your concerns, Jim, are also mine, and that's why for the future, not only just of Cape Cod, and teaching our young adults a job that they can hopefully move on to, but it actually will keep this actively in a preservation state. So thank you, Jim. I appreciate your comments, and I guarantee you what you're concerned about is also what I am too, and that's why I feel very confident that this is the right move.
All right. Thank you, Will, for your response. All right. Next, we have Stan.
Yeah, sounds good to me too, just like all the other commissioners. I guess going back to what John was saying, I think we really need, it sounds to me, this was a lot to digest all at once, being presented at this meeting without anything, the details behind it before this meeting. But it sounds like to me what we really need is, if we were to go ahead with this, it's the tech school that would be really spearheading, and this would become their property to use. And it has to be really their formalized plan that has to be presented to us. It sounds like, Leo, you would be working with them.
That's correct.
And you mentioned a lot of other associations or departments within the state that might get involved, but it really sounds to me that this would really be the tech school that has to come up with a formal program as to what they would do with this property, if I understand this right.
I would say you hit the nail on the head, sir. I believe that the tech school would really be the leaseholder, if you will. It won't be a conventional lease. It'll be an intermunicipal agreement. And yes, they're the ones that will be setting the curriculum that they need to set to meet the requirements to become a full-blown ag school, which is what they really want to do. That's their end result. And yes, I have offered my services to them. I believe that, and I'll let the superintendent, Mr. Sambon, speak to this, but he and I have been working on this for over 2 years. It has been taken the back seat at the tech school due to the new school construction. And Mr. Sanborn has had an awful lot to do in the last, 2 years with the completion of the new school and the knocking down of the old one. So we've been working on it for some time, though, and you are 100% right, sir. We need to formally submit the plan and formally submit the request to the Board of Selectmen, and then they subsequently will be back before you, and hopefully by then have everything that you need in writing. And as far as the other agencies that I mentioned, they would only be, again, I guess, and in part, I'm kind of a dreamer, but when I see like the community college working with other colleges and universities off Cape, and then some of them now even have satellite teaching facilities down here, I guess there's a part of me that is really hoping that UMass Dartmouth will work something out with the tech school, and kids in this program might, go right up into further their education with UMass Dartmouth. I don't know that, but I'm just saying that's one of my hopes, though. That's why I mentioned the other organizations, and hopefully they will be coming involved. I certainly know they're going to back the idea. I have not gotten one negative response from anyone, but commitment, that's a different story till you have everything in writing.
Okay. And Brad, I guess based on a comment that Leo just made about going to the Board of Selectmen first, and I'm not questioning that. I just don't know, should they be going to the Board of Selectmen with this proposal or us with this proposal? That's just like a question mark in my mind as to who do they present that to. I don't have any problem. I would think it sounds like maybe the Board of Selectmen have to be involved up front, but I'm not really sure. And I guess that's all I have.
All right. Thank you, Stan. Thank you, Leo, for your response.
Well, Brad, could I just answer that one, please? As far as
you can, and I'll answer it after you as well.
Oh, well, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not looking to put anyone before anyone else, okay? I went to the selectmen because they're the ones that would be signing the intermunicipal agreement. And let's face it, if I got completely negative response from them, I wouldn't have even bothered going down the road any further. So I'm not being presumptuous that any one board should see it first. My vision is to just have us all working together on this. If you like the concept and you want to move forward, then it will be my suggestion that this board work with me as we go forward. And however, if there's a final presentation, which I don't think there's ever going to be one, I think it's going to be, listen, this is the track we want to go down. Here are the steps we got to do, and we'll just do those steps. And I believe everyone will be involved from start to finish. So thank you, Brad. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, not at all. I think that's an excellent explanation, and I think that's the way it's going to go. I would say, presently the property is under the care and custody of the Conservation Commission, so a change would have to happen there, and it would ultimately, I think, go before a town meeting, and there would be a vote by the public on this. So I think it's got to clear a number of steps. Certainly the Board of Selectmen, this concept would need their support early on. And so I think that's where it goes. And I think we have a good opportunity tonight to discuss this as well. Any other thoughts or comments, Stan, at this point?
No, I'm all set, Brad.
All right, thanks. Good questions. Mark?
Good evening, gentlemen. As Leo had mentioned, the concept I think is very strong. I think it's a capital idea. The opportunity to introduce any of the students to life skills would be huge. The ability to learn anything at all that they can would be very valuable for all of them going forward. Any participation that you could generate from any of the students there would be a plus and a feather in everybody's cap. It might even be a good opportunity to enhance the FFA at the tech school. Nationwide, that's a pretty big organization. In our immediate area, it's pretty much non-existent, unfortunately, but there's not much agriculture for them to be involved in, unfortunately. This is a great opportunity for that to enhance it. funding source, budgetary issues regarding all of this going ahead. I'd be curious to see what kind of a budget that they wanted to appropriate to be able to manage this. I'd be curious to see a farm plan, to see how this is going to be laid out and what the method of going forward actually would be, as far as any of the projects or raising anything, whether it would be Christmas trees or fruit trees. These are fall and winter crops, but naturally they have, they require care 52 weeks a year. So there's, this is a long-term proposition, and before you see any significant results, it's a number of years out once it gets started. It's going to take a lot of fortitude to stay with it, and it's going to take a lot of gumption to continue the motivation. Hopefully the horticulture department at the tech school would be able to bolster that, because I think it's a wonderful opportunity. And I do agree with the idea that the tech school should ultimately be the ones to take over the property specifically for this process. I'd be curious to know if the intention of the program would be to also develop propagation for evergreens, for fruit trees. Would that exposure be part of the curriculum? Just to touch on one other thing, local agricultural commission. I'm a member of that, and you're correct. It has been very inactive for quite some time. Simple truth is we haven't had a job. There's been nothing to discuss or nothing to banter about. And the AgCom will probably be very staunch supporters, and I think they would be very much in favor of trying to get something like this off the ground. So I think you'd have a very positive result there. And the opportunity for them to participate, I think, would probably be looked at as a very favorable item. I could probably go on, but that's all I come up with at the moment.
Okay, if I can respond, Brad?
Yes, please.
I'm going to go backwards. Evergreens, natives, plants, absolutely are going to be looked at and hopefully grown there. You mentioned budget. The tech school, again, is going through some transitions over there with the new buildings. I'm not going to kid anyone. That's just why I want this to be run by and the association between the Agricultural Education Center and that 501c3 nonprofit organization will be seeking grants through the tech school. However, the grants will be specifically for this project. And also, I know this is a public meeting, but I've committed some funds myself to get it off the ground. So we feel that with minimal funding at this time, taken away from the tech school's budget, and again, we'll work out those particulars a little bit more clearer for you, Mr. Coleman, but it's going to be a slow kind of growing thing at this time, but we believe that if we put the right blocks in place, we'll be able to get some funding, because that's the big concern with me. As I told you in the opening of this idea, I plan on donating my time to services to the program for $1 a year, just so it's somewhat legal too. So there won't be any money out of their pocket for my services. The teachers obviously are on staff, but anything that we have to buy and things like that, I think you're going to find that we're going to be looking for some donations, probably right out of the gate. But again, I've already personally committed to it too. So thank you.
Wonderful. Just to go along with that, I think, as this progresses, I think you'd find that you'd have a lot of willingness throughout the community for participation at the physical aspect of it as well, just on a day-to-day level. And I'm looking forward to this thing getting launched. I think it's a wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
I would just add,
All
I've
right,
already been approached by the Garden Club in Harwich, a bunch of lovely ladies that I do a lot of with, and they're very excited about it. So they'll be down there helping us with their Christmas evergreens.
All right, thanks, Mark, and thank you, Leo, for your responses. I've got a few comments. I think the concept is really tremendous, and I applaud you for all the effort you've put in before tonight to investigate this and start to lay the groundwork. So I think the concept is really good. I do have to air a minor grievance. I've heard quite a bit recently in public hearings in a few places about neglect for conservation land, bogs, and I think this case is very different. Main Street Bogs, I think, is very different from Bell's Neck, but in my opinion, Bell's Neck was a process where it received several public hearings over several years, and a democratic process made a decision to go a different direction. So in my view, I wouldn't characterize that process as neglect. So I just want to go on record saying that. In terms of questions, I've got a couple about the present concept you've asked. How soon do you think this would go in the context of having to renew the lease? We've got the renewal till November 2020. Do you think this all could happen? Or would we want to be discussing a renewal of a lease prior to then?
No, I think that the 1 year extension, you mean, the one that the selectmen have just voted, that adding that 1 year? I mean, I was prepared to try to move this forward before August. So, believe me, getting the year was great. Brad, I think you made a point about town meeting. That's going to have a lot to do with this. And I've asked through Joe Powers, because I don't have access to the town attorney, but I asked them to investigate that because I actually wanted this on this year's town meeting. And we missed the deadline because I did not get a response back from them. Some municipal attorneys that I speak to tell me that the Board of Selectmen have the right to enter into a municipal agreement without town meeting approval. Now, does that mean that they also need because you guys, this care and custody terminology that the town of Harwich uses quite a bit, when you talk to different attorneys, they'll let you know it has not that much legal standing. But anyhow, if the Conservation Commission was on board with this, and you are the people who are in care and custody, but the selectmen are the executive branch that signs the intermunicipal agreement, quite frankly, Brad, I don't think this has to go to town meeting. Now, whether publicly you want to go to town meeting, then that's fine. So we're looking at next May. I don't think anyone's going to call a special to do this. We're looking at next May. So yeah, I'm really hoping, Brad, that we get this done within that 1 year extension time frame. Absolutely. I don't want to see it take 3 years to try to work out.
Right. And that makes sense, and that it sounds favorable. I would just follow up on the whole town meeting concept by saying that the conservation land was established by town meeting, and so again, I'm not an attorney either, but I would expect that to change that status to that property, that it may need to go to town meeting, and that's, again, I'm not certain. All right, I'm going to move on to some other questions. I got a real simple one. How about the concept of having some component of aquaculture with this center?
Absolutely. I believe that, it's our plan and vision to have a greenhouse first and foremost. After the greenhouse, we want to get into hydroponics. And because I am closely affiliated with a gentleman down off of exit 5, who has a aquaponic. He raises fish and shrimp and then uses that water to in fact fertilize and run through a hydroponic growing method. Absolutely, but is it going to happen in the first 5 years? Probably not. Probably not. In the 10-year window, I would really hope so, especially if we got a donation of the equipment needed. But yes, I do see a proponent of that.
Oh, good. Now, I think that, Cape-wide, it's an industry that could see some growth. And I think there's some potential to teach students to get some training in that industry. So I think that's favorable. All right, my last question is moving away from the concept and back to the present lease. And the last time we talked to you, we had discussion on you cleaning up the site in terms of some of the old cars and all. Do you want to give us an update on that, please?
They're going. I have a deal with Center Street Junkyard. Everybody's suffering because of the COVID stuff. Jack over there lost all his help and hasn't been able to pick up some of the vehicles, but one left the other day, so we're working on it. The big van thing that I had visions and plans for is I'm finding a little bit more difficult because I can't find someone with a trailer. We may end up waiting for the weather to get a little bit better, and we'll just probably get a container and just crush that up on the site. But I'd rather have it removed out in one piece. Other than that, we're working on it. As I mentioned earlier, the two vehicles that have the refrigeration on them, that's what we use for refrigeration when we deal with the meat and stuff. So they will probably just be moved. One of the refrigeration boxes I'm actually thinking of taking off. And again, a lot of this is going to delve on whether this project moves forward or not. If this was all going to go bad tonight and the selectmen didn't extend me the lease, I had all intentions of having that property broom swept on August 17th of this summer. So it's all going to get moved out of this eventually. So.
All right, thank you. Appreciate that update. I'm going to ask for questions from the public, but first I'm going to circle back to the commissioners just to see if they had any follow-up questions to what they've heard so far. It looks like John has one.
Just a point of clarification. Amy shared a copy of the lease with us, and the lease says very clearly the term is from November 13th, 2001 to November 12th, 2021, but the agreement or the decision was made at a special town meeting in August. So that's probably the date you're thinking of, Leo, but the actual term of the lease ends November 12th this year.
Excellent. Thank you for clearing that up. Appreciate it.
Thanks, John. Any additional comments right now? We can always circle back, but I will. If there's none, I think that Alan would like to speak, so I'll ask Alan.
I'm sorry, Brad. I just asked one question of Leo. With
Sure.
respect to the property itself, so it's 33 acres, 10 acres of which are currently cranberry bogs. Based on all of the activities that you've mentioned tonight, do you see a good portion of those bogs being converted back to wetlands or uplands or farmlands or whatever we would call it?
I only see one portion that I would probably put forth that would be turned back into some kind of a natural reclaiming kind of situation, kind of like what they're doing over at the Bank Street bogs. And again, I've contacted MDAR, and they're the ones that are helping the Conservation Trust over there. The other acreage I do not see, this time anyhow, being turned back into anything natural. I'd rather see it kept as agricultural use. And if that means just growing cranberries, I would love to see part of it with native grasses, which I did over here on my own property, because I think that is a great educational tool too. But for the most part, I would say out of the gate, the first 5 years, I think you're going to see the majority of the cranberries bogs as they are continue to be used, and then after maybe the first 4 years, start to phase out different areas and implement the plan that we have put together.
Thanks.
All right, thanks. Looks like you're up. We'll take comments from the public, and we'll start with Alan.
Good evening. How are you today? So I think this is a large concept that Leo has presented. I think it might have some traction, but you got a lot of hurdles to go through. The municipalities, the school boards, they have to add it to the curriculum, all those different things, budgets, funds, and then also, putting that in motion and getting that forward. So there's a lot of work to be had there. It's a good idea, good concept. I don't want to see the land grow up into trees and bushes and taken out of agricultural use, I think that would be a good spot for it. And potentially, if the town buys the Pleasant Lake bogs on 124, right across the street from the tech school, this could also be utilized for a tech school entity also, possibly. So there's a lot of good movements here. I do like the board members, how they're enthusiastic about this idea. However, I find it kind of strange that we're enticing an agricultural entity concept for kids to learn agriculture and all the other things that go along with it, but yet then we close down the bogs that we have on the reservoir. It's kind of doesn't make clear sense to me that there might be one student out of the tech school that wants to grow cranberries, and here we are closing them down. The other thing is, what happens if this concept doesn't go through? What's plan B? Are we going to go and let this bog just kind of fall by the wayside because the concept took a long time to evolve, and then therefore the bogs are now in natural state again, and there goes those bogs off the list? I think we really want to have the two ideas side by side in case one fails. I don't think you want to let these bogs go away. As Leo said, I might be the only person here in the town that's trying to promote the cranberries, but I'm going to keep going. I'm going to add more vines in a couple of weeks, another third of an acre on my bog, my family's bog. I think there's a lucrative business in the cranberries. I'll always promote cranberries. Always have, always will. I'm going to continue doing it as long as I can. I got two sons that are going to grow up doing it too, and they'll be the 8th generation from Harwich doing it. So I'm proud of that. I can't get the right words wrapped around my thoughts right now because there's a lot to take in. I think the idea is good, but there's going to be one student that want to come out of there and may want to grow cranberries, and here we are, the board conservation voted 5 members to shut down a very good cranberry bog. And if you drive in there right now, that bog is taking its time to grow in. I don't think the bog wants to die. I think the bog wants to grow cranberries. I think it's telling us, keep it going. And the other night I learned that the selectmen have control of the property and you only have care and custody. That's an interesting concept to know, because maybe the selectmen need to revisit the decision that you made and put it back out to bid, because there are people that want to grow cranberries and keep the open space and keep the nice natural landscape going and work with nature and work with all the entities that oversee the rules and regulations to keep it going. So I just don't want to lose sight of cranberries in Harwich. And I think that's the main purpose of anything that we do in Harwich, because that's our agricultural backbone, that and fishing. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Alan. I greatly respect your opinion on this, and I appreciate the fact that you've been here for every one of these meetings we've had on these bogs. I will correct you, though. I was at that hearing the other night with the Board of Selectmen, and they don't have, control of that land. They need to approve a lease for that property, but that, the town meeting set that property for the care and custody at Bell's Neck for the Conservation Commission. So that's the way it needs to go until it's changed. And the question is, can it be changed at town meeting or otherwise? But either way, I greatly respect and appreciate your opinion on this and your input to this process. Leo, did you have a follow-up?
I did. Alan, you hit the nail on the head as far as I'm concerned, but you asked the question, what's plan B? Well, my plan B is, and I laid out 3 plans for the commissioners to think about tonight. This one here, which is, I think, the best, but if they don't, that's fine with me. But I certainly encourage them, and maybe you hadn't joined the meeting yet, Alan, is to put it out for rebid again. I am interested in rebidding it. I am interested in growing cranberries there, and I am interested in continuing to farm the property. However, I don't want to drop dead in 5 years from now, and then really there will be nobody out there that will want to keep this going, and it will end up reverting back. So I'd rather make the move now towards something that I feel is more keeping cranberries growing in perpetuity, along with some other really cool stuff too, because they can work together in harmony. Cranberries are a very, very interesting crop. students are going to learn an awful lot about water conservation, soil conditions, you know, nitrogen loading, phosphate uptake, and also a release. An awful lot of science in a cranberry bog. It's the perfect crop to teach people, not to be cranberry growers, but to teach people about agriculture. And if one wants to grow cranberries later, that's great. You know, good luck. But I agree with you 100%, sir, and that's why I think this is a positive move, because we will be growing cranberries there, as far as I'm concerned. As long as I'm alive, we'll be growing them there. But thank you.
All right, thanks for the response. Any other comments from members of the public? All right, hearing none. Any additional comments from commissioners or others?
Yeah, hey Brad, this is Stan. This goes, I think, Alan's comments and Leo's comments. It goes back to my original question, going back to the tech school, is to the curriculum and what their real plan, and is how big of a program is this going to be? There are, I mean, maybe I didn't want to minimize the way I said it. That's a big question as to what their proposal is as far as what they think they can do with the property from a curriculum standpoint. And I agree with Alan. I think this was one proposal that was put forth, but as Leo said, there are other alternatives that need to be considered as well.
All right, thanks, Dan. Let's see, Lindsay, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
Yeah, I pushed the wrong button before, sorry.
Okay. You got the floor.
I'm a little bit late to the game, but I've offered whatever my 30 years of expertise is to Leo in the consummation of this project, and agree with the diversifying of the curriculum through the tech. I see a lot of upside to it. It may take some time to work out the kinks, but anything worthwhile really is. So that's my 2 cents.
All right, thank you for the comments and for attending tonight. All right, so we've got a second agenda item. You know, as we conclude discussion on this one, I think we'll probably come back before too long once we see something in writing, and we'll have a discussion. So this has been really interesting, and it's kind of encouraging to know we have options here.
Thank you. I want to just personally thank the board for taking the time to listen to me this evening too. And as we get the thumbs up, and we meaning myself and the tech school, and we get some direction, we'll be working closely with Mr. Powers on this. We'll get you all guys all the stuff you need in writing as we move forward. And I think you're going to be very impressed with the curriculum and what our vision is anyhow as we move forward. So once again, thank you all very, very much. And if you want, I'll be happy to hang around and listen to the next item on the agenda, but thank you for this time.
All right, thank you, Leo, and thank everyone for the discussion. All right. So the second item on the agenda is discussion and possible vote on management of the retired cranberry bogs in the Bell's Neck Conservation Area at 0 Depot Street in West Harwich, map 36, parcel M5. Discussion may also include the management of the rest of this conservation area as it pertains to the approved Bell's Neck Land Management Plan. And by way of background, so that the Bell's Neck Land Management Plan was developed over 10 years ago, and the Conservation Commission is seeking to update this, and we don't want to do nothing. We don't want to just let things go as they are. We want to have some active land management at the Bell's Neck bogs and the surrounding properties. So tonight we just, we had a bog agenda item, so we wanted to just continue the discussion on this. I think Amy laid out some ideas for things to consider. We also, voted on a series of approaches not long ago, and one of those is active management of invasive plants. So that's one thing that we're going to discuss tonight. And one idea that came up in discussion with Amy was to have a volunteer work day in mid-May to go out and start to do some manual work on getting rid of some invasive plants in the bog. And so I'd like to hear some thoughts on that. We already have CPC money for gates. And so we're looking to have DPW fabricate these to save some money at the Robbins Pond Conservation Area. So we want to see if we want to go this route, the Bell's Neck as well. And then another item is to discuss gating off the conservation area off of Depot Street during the height of the herring season. This was done for decades, and it ceased not long ago once the harvest of herring stopped. And we've had some poaching issues for both river herring and American eel, and so that we've discussed in the past, gating it off during the peak of the season. So I'd like some comments on that. The problem with that I think I've learned in discussion with some town officials is that it's become such a popular area that, the old times were 7 to 7 at night to 7 in the morning, it was closed. And, once the days get longer, you're going to have some public members down there at 7 o'clock at night still hanging around. And so will that be a problem in terms of, shooing people out? I think reopening the gate at 7 in the morning will not be that difficult. The trick might be, the closing later on. So that's a decision that we should discuss tonight. And that's probably time sensitive because, in a few weeks we will have the peak of that river herring season at that site. And so if we're going to do it for this year, we should consider that tonight. And Amy would also, she has funding to look at some of this Phragmites removal in the bogs, and she'd like to consider going to contract to do that. The timing wouldn't be until later in the fall, I guess late summer, before the Phragmites go to seed. So we should discuss that and to see if we favor having a herbicidal treatment of the Phragmites in the bogs that would be under contract for later this season. And she does have funding if we decide to do that. And other than that, she has ideas on new signs for the conservation area, and as well as the possibility of moving the parking area next to the fish ladder back a few feet to try to give a little more buffer, maybe some more plantings to protect, runoff into the herring run. So those are the items that we have, but we could also discuss really anything to do with the management. I think at some point we're going to need the help of Amy to update the plan, and then we'll circle back and we'll have a public hearing on that plan update. So we're not going to vote on that tonight. We're going to just discuss ideas and then circle back at some point. We want to be proactive. We have got static for the concept that we haven't taken care of that property. I feel like we had to go through a deliberate process to view future use, and now we're at a point to update the management plan and to get active with taking care of the property. So that was kind of a large introduction, but I think what I'll do, I'll start with Ernie and just see if he has any thoughts or comments on those items. And if we have to, we can circle back and go item by item if we need to. But I don't see us voting on that much tonight, other than the gates perhaps. So what are your thoughts on these things, Ernie?
Yeah, the first one with respect to clearing the invasives out of the bog area, is that something that, is there more to it than that? Once we get the invasives out, what are the next steps beyond that for the proposals that we've approved for those bogs?
Well, what we've talked about is having different approaches for different sections of the bog. And so we've approached, the section that's closest to the Herring River, returning back to the Herring River. We talked about actively trying to manage that to move it towards functional native wetland with wetlands plants. And we've talked about, allowing some of the northern section to move towards an upland community of plants.
Right.
And so those two things are on the table. We have talked about an educational component that isn't that far away from what Leo's proposed tonight. But we've had two public hearings where we really haven't had any comment from the public on that. Whether we would have a section of that bog that might be for growing shrubs or trees, and something that could be done cooperatively with the tech school. So, I mean, we did discuss that. We just haven't got a lot of public comment on that concept. But I think the idea is to take control of invasives, try to manage that far section to the south to become functional wetland, and maybe manage that northern section to become upland. So that's kind of where we are. We have what we voted on is part of the public record, and I worked from early this morning until I got to this call, so I wasn't able to go back to that, and I don't have it in front of me. But we did vote on a preferred option.
Yeah, I hear all that, Brad. I guess where I was going with that comment was to make a blanket statement of clearing the invasives out of the bog area. It seems like it doesn't present to me a well thought out plan of how we're going to restore these bogs. You know, you mentioned that the southern area we're going to allow to become more of a wetland area. Well, I would think that would take care of a lot of the invasives in and of itself. Whereas the upland area, yeah, I can see focusing on clearing invasives out of that area. But I think we need to have a much better plan, step-by-step plan for these bogs, rather than just make blanket statements like clear invasives out of the bog area. You know, I think we need to take each section of these bogs, say this is what we're going to do. Our ultimate goal is with this particular section of the bogs, and to get to that goal, what do we need to do? Clear invasives, you know, leave the invasives, flood it, you know, whatever. But this is the number one on this list. To me, seems like a just pull the trigger kind of reaction, and I'm not comfortable with that. So that's my initial reaction. The gates, I think you post a big sign on them saying that these gates will be locked at 7 p.m. every night, so that everybody driving in there can see that. And if they want to be there after 7, then they'll have to call the police to figure out how to get the car out. You know, that's I don't think we need to spend a lot of time with that, other than, you know, just put the message out there that these gates are going to be closed at that point in time. So those are my major comments on that.
Yeah, thanks, Ernie. And I would just say that, you know, the way this was approached was that we voted on a series of steps. We reviewed some options and we voted on those steps, and you know, that's where we are right now. And so there is a little more detail to that, Ernie, in terms of invasive plants. We identify a couple species to work on, and the second step was to finalize the management plan. And we've had just a series of, you know, killer meetings for months now, and so I don't think we've made as much progress on that update as we'd like to. But that's the vehicle for the details you're looking for. All right, let's see, John, do you have any thoughts or comments?
Yeah, well, I have some sort of reactions to what Ernie just had to say, which is one thing that struck me about what Ernie said was, once we're done with the invasive management, which itself is sort of an unrealistic concept. I don't know that you're ever done with invasive management. And from my point of view, it's part of a process, and I get what Ernie's talking about, that it would be great to have a much more detailed plan so that we all sort of knew exactly what had to be done. And I agree, we don't right now. But from my point of view, planning an activity like doing some invasive management is a good way for us to go there if you know, a sufficient number of the commissioners can find the time to come and spend a day at the bog doing invasive management and getting a little more familiar on the ground with the conditions there, where we can talk and think some more about what the next steps are. So I'm kind of in favor of that, doing that. And I also had a thought about the gate closing business, which, like you say, Brad, opening the gate in the morning isn't a big deal. Closing it in the evening might be more problematic. And once people understand clearly, people who frequent that place toward the end of the day and want to make use of whatever resources are there that they can towards the end of the day, once they understand clearly that there's going to be a problem if they aren't out of there by 7, probably shouldn't be a problem. But my thought is that we should engage the police department or someone to hopefully help maybe come and close the place at 7 in the evening, rather than one of us trying to go and close the gates and trying to chase people out. I don't think people would pay more attention to a cruiser and someone with a badge than they would to me telling them it's time to leave. So that's just another thought about that. I guess I don't have too much more to say. I guess I don't know where the Phragmites is down there that Amy is talking about, but sounds to me like a good idea to try to get ahead of any Phragmites that is in that place and look at. I think we should authorize her to look to engage someone to do that for us. I think that's all I have to say at this point.
All right, thanks, John. Let's see, Jim, you're up.
Yeah, I'll touch on the Phragmites first, because that's something we've been talking about for a couple of years now. It's a relatively small area right now, but and it's a small problem. It won't cost much to deal with, but as we all know, that stuff can spread pretty fast, and it's something we want to keep out of there. So I'm wondering, Brad, do you think it sounds like Amy wants us to vote to authorize her to use those funds. Do you think we could do that tonight?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's an item that looks to me, she has the funds, and we just need to, vote to allow the conservation agent to go forth to set up a contract. We could always ask to, but I think it makes sense to authorize that. And I think we should have, the decision also on the gates, as well as, if we want to have a volunteer go to start the process with invasives. And I think John's comment was really valuable, that it'll help us discuss it on site and become more familiar with the site.
Okay, yes, I suppose we'll do that after everyone comments. So yeah, I'm in favor of the Phragmites removal. I think it's pretty minor, and it makes a lot of sense to do it now. Overall, those bogs are really doing well as far as not having invasives. They really have an excellent native plant community, so we don't have a huge invasive problem there. But it's, I think what Amy's looking at doing in this work day is maybe trying to get rid of a few invasive willow trees. And I know there's some bittersweet in a few areas, and I think that would be valuable to have that work day. I'm very familiar with the site and the plant communities, but I'm not sure everyone is, and I think that would be helpful. So, and as far as the gate goes, I recall there was a pretty functional situation with that a few years ago when the neighbor usually closed it and opened it. And it seemed like he did it later in the evening, more like around sunset. I mean, it is a really popular place for people to go in the kind of after work hours to check out the herring run. It's really popular with bird photography. People even fish down there, both in the trying to catch a striper that swims all the way up there, and of course the freshwater fishing. So I think that there might be a little pushback trying to shut that gate at 7. I mean, I'd be in favor of it being a sunset to sunrise situation. And at the very least, we could clearly have a sign that says this place is closed from sunset to sunrise, which is typical of a lot of conservation areas. But, all right, well, those are my comments for now.
All right, thanks, Jim. Yeah, the former Conservation Commission member, Ron Solier, lives right there, and he has volunteered to take on that task. He just couldn't be, he felt he couldn't do it 100%, open, closing. So I think we've got a real good friend there to help out with that. And we just got to piece together a plan that's going to be sustainable and won't rankle people too much. But, I've been going there to harvest fish for longer than I care to admit. And it was always a thing that was closed at night to reduce the poaching. So it's really very recently that we haven't used those gates. All right, Stan, you're up.
Yeah, I guess my concern is that section where we talked about where there's some viable cranberry potential for the near future anyways, and going back to that discussion where we said we might have something to do with the tech school or whatever, and that seems to be possibly off the board if we were to go ahead with what was discussed tonight with Leo. So I guess my question is, what do we do with that section of that area now going forward? That's all I have.
Well, I just got one thought, Stan. That's that. We put the idea out that section could be managed for educational purposes. We voted not to lease it, but within the options for what we voted on, it was still a piece that could be used for educational purposes. So it is possible that what Leo is promoting, that same project could possibly use that section as well. But we also, I think we approved to have Alan Hall take some plants out of there as well. So that occurred with that vote. So we'll see what happens. We didn't get a lot of public comments on the educational piece for cranberry growing there.
Right, because
go ahead, Stan.
The part that you mentioned about with Alan taking some of those cranberries out, I'm trying to remember what we actually agreed to. I know we discussed the possibility. I don't know if we actually came to any agreement with Alan or anything on that as to what would be done or not. I know it was a possibility.
Mr. Chairman?
Alan, do you want to remind us?
Yeah, you voted not to. You voted not to harvest the vines, which was a discouragement.
Geez, I don't recall a negative vote to allow you to take some vines. I think it was the contrary to that.
No, you
any other
voted
commission
against.
members remember that vote?
I do. There was no vote or any action taken that. It was a matter of discussion at the time, and it was an option that was put on the table, and that's where it was left. There was no action on it.
All right, thanks, Mark. So I would say that section of the bog is, we do need to get more detail to our future management of that section of the bog. And again, that's where the management plan comes into play. And what we did vote, what we approved, allows that consideration as an option. So I would say, Stan, that option's still on the table, as well as getting some vines to local growers that want some vines.
Brad, excuse me. Yeah, I agree with you. That's kind of my point. I think those were all options, but we didn't have any definitive conclusion as to what would be done with that area. That's all I was getting at in the beginning. That's something that we have to address.
Agreed. All right, so Stan's all set. So that means you're up, Mark?
I think it's a good opportunity to go forward with removing the Phragmites. I think we need to authorize Amy to act on that. As far as the rest of the land management, that's a pretty big undertaking, and I think the spectrum goes a lot broader than just with the bogs. The invasives, I think, need to be focused on in large part in the surrounding areas, because that's where you're going to get the infiltration. And if anybody wants to go over there and pick invasive out of the wetland area, I would welcome you to go right ahead, but without having some sort of a larger plan in place and a broader understanding of what the end game is going to be, I think it's somewhat of an opportunity to spin your wheels. But most importantly, getting rid of the Phragmites would be a very positive thing. And they are at the far southern part of the bog, by the way. I mentioned about the cranberry vines on the other side being a non-issue. Just to touch on one thing, you had mentioned earlier about the issue of neglect. In many conversations, there's been a lot of frustration due to the time it took the commission to go through their acts or inaction. I personally have mentioned it more than once. I've been a supporter of that particular parcel staying in cranberry production right from the get-go. And it took a long time to get to a point where it was decided to not do anything. And it was a very slow act. There's been a lot of frustration, and it's unfortunate, but I'm not going to try to beat a dead horse. But once again, in my closing statement, responsible cranberry growing in that application would take care of every speck of the discussion we're having about managing that property today. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark. And again, we have, I think, a healthy disagreement, but I greatly appreciate your input in this and your comments. So, so for me, I think I was involved with the approval of the last management plan over 10 years ago, and so my goal is to just roll up my sleeves and take part in that edit and review process and try to get that done. And I think, you know, certainly for the last 4 or 5 months, we can't really blame anybody because we've had such busy commission meetings, and our agent has been just working unbelievably to try to keep these meetings going. So she understands that we need to move on that, and I've been through it once to review it, and I think, you know, once we find some room, we can revisit that management plan and get it done. And I think that a trip out there for a work day in mid-May is a great chance to get out there and talk about things. It would be advertised, and we can discuss, we can get some work done, and we can discuss what we'd like to see in that management plan. So that's my goal, is to get that plan done. And, you know, so I'm going to ask for some more comments from the public, and I think what I'll probably do shortly is make a motion on the volunteer work day, the gate management, and then authorizing Amy to use wetlands funds for the herbicide treatment of Phragmites. Those are probably the 3 items that I think we can act on. So I guess we'll open it up for public comments. Looks like Leo would like to speak. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. Just sitting there listening to conversations, I just have, I guess, a question and a general comment. Now that the town is owners and managers of a wetland, aren't there certain criteria that even the Conservation Commission has to go through in order to manage those wetlands? No longer have agricultural exemptions there because you voted to take it out of agricultural production. So, I guess it's not even a question; it's more of a comment too. I just would caution you in making sure that we're covering all our bases on that aspect. The second thing is the MDA, Massachusetts Agricultural Resources, has a division that has helped the Conservation Trust with the restoration, rather a large project, and I'm sure you're all aware of it, over at the Bank Street bogs. I would suggest that maybe you have Amy reach out to them. I know the gentleman personally that heads up that division, and I think they would be inclined to come down and provide their services. I don't even think they'll charge anything. If they do, it would be a minor fee to help you put together a management plan with possible very small restoration kind of movements. In other words, taking out certain ditches, maybe making certain ditches wider to encourage the flow a little better, I'm not sure because, again, it's been a long time. I harvested that bog, but that was 10 years ago, and I haven't been down there since. So I know the two different aspects of it. But the shot is, I would just encourage the board to reach out to MDOT. You could possibly just have Amy call over to Mr. Locke, and I'm sure he'll be happy to share his contacts with them, helping them do that major project. And please understand, I'm not suggesting that you do a project of that size and nature, but maybe just to get them in there to help you put together a conservation area management plan. And I think with that on file, you would be well within your rights to remove things, cut things. I mean, seriously, even going in there and trimming out those vines. I mean, is that not considered entering a wetland and cutting down wetland plants? I don't know. I'm not a conservation guy, but I'm just kind of throwing it out there for your perusal. So, but thanks again, and I appreciate you letting me listen.
Yeah, thanks, Leo. What does that acronym stand for? Because I have been involved with the Bank Street bogs a little bit. I'm not sure who that agency is.
Massachusetts Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources, MDAR, MDAR.
Okay. All right, that's a good idea then. What we have done is we've consulted.
Gentleman recently. I was the cranberry grower there, and he was the cranberry restoration specialist. We had it over at the British Beer Company, or whatever it was in Hyannis. Really, really informative. So if they can't help you out, at least I know they have access to a lot of information. So I would suggest you reach out to them. Thanks.
That's a good idea. What has been done is Amy has reached out to the state's Division of Ecological Restoration, and they've managed bog reclamation projects in Plymouth, Falmouth, a few other places. And so they came down, took a look at it, and they felt like it really didn't fit their interest. They felt it was kind of small scale with some upland pieces, and so it didn't really pass their muster, their view of fully naturalized restoration. And then we also consulted with Cape Cod Mosquito Control, and they came down, and it was agreed that they would be active in any future management to make sure that we can avoid the breeding grounds for large numbers of mosquitoes. So those two groups have been contacted. I think your suggestion is a good idea for the agricultural group.
It may have already been affiliated with them, so I may have been. You guys might have already gone down that road, so I apologize if I did, but I'll try to look into it a little bit more and maybe reach out to Amy myself. Thanks.
Yep, thank you. And the full naturalization process, which we discussed, is it's super expensive. The Bank Street bogs is going to be, I think the tune is going to exceed $1.5 million, and that was more than that was spent in Plymouth, and more than that was going to be spent in Falmouth and the Coonamessett River. So it's a big price tag. I think the Bank Street bogs comes with a hope of possibly some nitrogen attenuation that may assist our interest in moving away from septic sewage treatment. So that has that interest. I can't tell you whether that's going to be viable or not, but there's multiple interest at Bank Street bogs that brought in these other groups I just mentioned. This location didn't really attract that interest. So it's more of an active management to try to reduce invasives and to allow sections of the bog to move towards a naturalized state without that full naturalization cost. So let's see, any other members of the public want to speak?
Mr. Chairman, Alan Hall.
Yes, Alan.
I'd just like to point some information that if you decide to let the cranberry vines be harvested, and as Leo brought up the situation of them being a wetland now, there is a form underneath the conservation for abandoned cranberry bogs, which could be filled out by a potential grower that would be interested in those vines and brought forth before your board for approval, so that mechanism could be utilized so that the vines could be harvested.
Thanks, Alan. I couldn't remember if we voted or not, but we had pretty good support of that concept at that hearing when we voted to not lease it. So I think that's an option that, you expressed an interest, and I think there was good support at that last hearing. So I don't know why that couldn't happen. And the only other thing that would change that would be perhaps if there was an educational component to that one section that came forth. But there's some vines you could probably use in other sections. Would you agree?
It's possible, but those Stevens are probably the most advantageous ones to take. And they will grow back. If you do the educational purpose, you can have them regrow the vines by fertilizing and getting them back in order again after they're cut.
All right, thank you. Let's see, any other comments from members of the public? All right, guys, I'm interested in not having us go deep in the night like we've been doing every other meeting. But so I think I will make a motion on those 3 items, but any other comments first? All right. Seeing none, I'll move that we establish a volunteer workday in mid-May for the commission to go out to the bogs and do some invasive plant removal, mainly what we voted on last time.
Excuse me, Brad, I can't hear what you're saying.
All right, sorry, Stan. I'll try to speak clearer. So I'm making a motion to establish a volunteer workday for the commission that will be publicized, and so that we can all go out there together in mid-May to do some work on invasive plants in the bog. Secondly, this motion includes a recommendation to close the gates during the month of April and May at Depot Street from 7 in the morning until sundown. I think we probably should pick a time as opposed to just sundown, and so maybe say 7:30. And then thirdly, part of the motion is to approve Amy's movement on establishing a contract to have a professional company use herbicide treatments in the Phragmites in the southern bog. Could I have a second, please?
I'll second that, Brett.
All right, seconded by Ernie. Any discussion?
Well, Brad, I think you said close the gates from 7 in the morning till 7:30 in the evening, and I think you meant the opposite. So close the gates
Correct.
from 7:30 in the evening until 7 in the morning. Is that the intent of your?
Yes, and
Yes.
yes, that's a good catch. So I'll modify my motion. They will be closing the gate from 7:30 in the evening until 7 in the morning.
I'll still second it. That's good, Brett. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Ernie.
Yeah, just one comment from me. I still think 7:30 is kind of early for the evening, particularly when you get into May when it's light till 8:30, close to 9. I just know it's kind of a popular time to go down there just to look at the herring and view the wildlife and whatnot. So I think if possible, it'd be better to close them closer to actual sunset.
This is just for April and May, Brad?
Yeah, I think we've had people poaching at night. There's been an investigation with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to glass eel poaching there at night. That's the key, is to not allow people to go in there at night. I just worry the language of sunset might be hard for the person who has to deal with this, and maybe for the public to know what to expect. Do we feel better with sunset or with 8 o'clock?
Yeah, I mean, maybe 8 o'clock or 8:30. I think that would be fine, but just a little bit later anyway.
But in April and May, it turns dark before 8:30, I believe, doesn't it? I mean, we're not talking June, the height of the summer or anything like that.
So, and when you say April, you're saying starting tomorrow.
I think we would like to do that. Obviously, it's not going to happen tomorrow, but going forward, I think that's the period of time that you would like to have the gate shut, April and May. And so I think what we have to do is vote tonight, make a decision, and then reach out to Ron, who lives there, reach out to the police. Amy's done that. They've already had a conversation with her, and they're willing to help out. I don't know if we have a commitment that they would do, all nights or all mornings. So I like 8 o'clock because I think, it just gives people a time.
Yeah, I think if you try to schedule it around sunset, you're going to have a lot of issues with people saying, well, I could still see my watch, and they're locked in and they have to go through the aggravation of getting out of the place. If you give them a specific time, then there's no question. There's no equivocation as to whether they were there or not when they shouldn't have been.
Yeah, I'm fine with 8 o'clock.
Okay, well, I'll modify the motion to close the gate from 8 o'clock at night until 7 in the morning.
I'll second your new motion, Brad.
All right, thanks, Eddie. We're getting some good practice here. Any additional comments or thoughts? All right, then we'll vote by roll call. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. Starting with John.
Aye.
Ernie.
Aye.
Jim.
Aye.
Stan.
Aye.
Mark.
Nay.
Okay, and myself, Brad Chase. Aye. So the motion carries 5-1. I will ask Mark which item he opposed. I'm curious.
The invasive work.
Okay. All right. Well, one thing, Mark, I think is, we should see well, here's the thing. I'll move, and I apologize for not doing this, but I will make a motion that we ask that the Conservation Commission review the contract for the invasive plant work so that we at least have a chance to see that. Could I have a second?
That I will second.
All right, so seconded by Mark. Any discussion? I understand Mark's concern. I think Amy has money for this fiscal year, so I think that there's pretty good agreement to go forward. But I do agree that we want to know what's going to happen, and so I think that the prudent thing to do is to have the commission actually review the contract narrative and have a chance to comment on that.
Brad, I'm getting confused here. So we have a volunteer work day to remove invasives. We have a contract to remove Phragmites. So which one are we, Mark, which one are you objecting to?
Actually, both, Ernie.
Okay.
I would be more supportive if we were able to review the agreement for what was going to take place with the Phragmites. The issue of diddling around with a few invasives out in a wetland area, to me, is counterproductive with the overall picture of what needs to go on there. And I think there should be a much broader plan in place. To me, this is an exercise in futility, my opinion.
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, Mark. I think that the key is that we have been moving towards an update of the management plan for some time, and it needs to happen. And I think John's comment is really valuable to say that here's our chance to get together, not very far in the future, advertise so we can all get out there and do some work and then discuss these ideas. So I think it's a good idea. So, we approved this action, and then I have a second motion on the table to ask that the commission gets to review and approve, the contract narrative for the herbicide treatment of Phragmites. So that's on the table. Otherwise, we have approved the 3 actions. Any other comments on the motion on the table? Mark has seconded it.
Yeah, my only comment was I'm comfortable with Amy reviewing that contract and taking whatever action she feels is appropriate. I don't know why we necessarily need to review the contract or what value we could lend to that process.
No, that's a good vote of confidence for Amy. I would say we've got, folks like Jim and Mark that are pretty experienced with these things, so I don't mind us having a chance to review it. And as a taxpayer, I also like the idea of making sure that we, get a good return for these investments. So I don't mind. I understand where you're coming from, Ernie, but I don't mind. Mark, did you have something to add?
I do. In no way do I mean to degrade Amy's ability or her standing and position. I think she does an outstanding job right across the board, and I very highly support what she does. She goes above and beyond, and she does it time and again. So my question regarding this whole matter has nothing to do with her ability to make judgment. That's all.
All right. Well, I like getting out there mid-May and let's, really put our thoughts together on getting a management plan finalized. So I think that's good timing. It's not too far off in the distant future. And I do support the idea of us reviewing, a brief narrative on a contract for specifications. That will help us improve our knowledge of this process too. So, so I'm going to ask for a roll call vote on the motion. It's been seconded by Mark. And so all those in favor say aye, those opposed say nay, starting with John.
Aye.
Ernie?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Stan?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
And myself, Brad Chase, aye. So that motion carries 6-0. All right. I'll personally reach out to the Department of Natural Resources, our vote, our interest in the gate. I'll reach out to Ron. I think I'll let Amy discuss with the police department, and we'll see if we can get this closed pretty soon. We'll need signs, and I'm personally willing to help out with morning openings. So if I need to do 2 or 3 of those, I can do that. So we'll piece this together. So we've got this huge meeting on the 7th. So I think under old business, we'll probably summarize what we did tonight and our votes. We won't have Amy there, so that's going to be a fun one. Any other new business for tonight?
Brad,
Yep.
can I respectfully request that you figure out a better arrangement for your microphone, because it alternately is easy to understand what you're saying, and then we just lose whole chunks. And you don't get stopped every time that happens. And particularly when we're going to have a rather demanding meeting next week, I think that you need to, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what the issue is, but that needs to get straightened out so we not only, I mean, we all want to hear what you're saying, but particularly without Amy there next week, it's going to be critical that everybody understands every word that you say.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think what's happened is we dumped our landline where that mic worked really well, and I'm using my cell phone, and maybe I'm moving my hand around. I'm trying to, because this has been going on. I think what I will do, there's a laptop I can probably borrow, and that has audio. The PC I have does not have audio.
Do you have a headset you can plug into your cell phone? I mean, that might solve the problem if you just had, you know, like what I'm using here. A lot of cell phones come with those things, and it stays in the same place. I don't know how you hear what I'm saying, but that might be an improvement.
Yeah, no, thanks. I'm going to work on that because that's the last thing we need is to have a huge meeting and people can't hear me. I can hear you guys well. I have to mute and put my speakerphone on. It's kind of a hassle. I would like to get a computer that has audio and video, and that's what I'd like to do. And so I think I can probably try to borrow one of those. And
Hey, Brad,
but thanks for bringing that up, John.
Brad, I got an extra Chromebook if you want to borrow it.
Yeah, well, let me see what I can do. You know, I've got my kids have got stuff. You know, I'm in the basement and I've got this PC down here. It's just it doesn't have a camera. It doesn't have audio.
Yeah.
The monitor is ancient, and I'm in the basement because they're up top. You know, getting ready for school, and so I think I've got to bring a laptop down the basement.
Yeah, because a lot of times, just like just now, and then there are times where it fades out, and I don't know, like you say, if you're moving, if it's a cell phone, if you're moving it around or something, I don't know.
All right, I'm gonna resolve that because next week I can't have a problem. You know, it worked out well with the old landline, but this has been a problem consistently, and it's a pain because I have to hold it up to my mouth, and it's just I need a better process. So, all right, folks, or maybe I turn over the reins to Ernie. So that might be another option.
Especially next week, right, Brad?
Yeah, next week
you don't
for
want
sure.
to do that, Brad. Unless you want the meeting
All right,
to go
John,
for 4 hours.
Yeah. Oh boy. All right. I will give a little bit of discussion before I sign off, and that's some of you probably heard that the Board of Selectmen did not approve 2 of our warrant articles.
Yeah.
I think Ernie, you were on there. Pretty disappointing. I think they were the only 2-2 votes among all the warrant articles, and they did approve the in lieu fee, so that's going to go before town meeting, but the others did not. I did call 2 selectmen after that to speak to them, and I had very long, detailed conversations about that process. And so, you know, we put in a lot of work, and I just encouraged them the next chance that they came up that they would, you know, give them due consideration because, you know, we did spend a lot of time on those. They explained they were really interested in reducing the size of the warrant, you know. So, but Ernie, you were on that call.
Yeah, I gave my comments to Amy during the call, and there were words in my note to her that I can't repeat here. But they approved the revolving fund motion, or they're going to put that on the warrant article, but that doesn't help us because all that is the receptor for the in lieu of fees. So if we can't collect in lieu of fees, what's the point of having that ability in the revolving fund? I mean, it was worthless as far as I'm concerned. And I mean, what that means to me is that we're going to be making decisions for the next 12 months that, or practically longer actually, that are going to be more contestable in court, and we're going to increase court attorney fees for the town. A great decision on their part.
I talked to Amy after that meeting, so I went back and watched the meeting, or that section of the meeting. I was not impressed with our leadership there of the selectmen.
It was disappointing. Well, I just thought I'd give you that update, and thank everybody for the hard work to get to that point. But and I felt strong that I called the guys the next day, and we had a good discussion. So maybe that'll help for future, you know, consideration. Hard to say. All right, guys. Anything else you want to bring up? All right. Well, then I'm going to move that we adjourn tonight.
I'll second.
All right, thanks. Seconded by John. All those in favor say aye by roll call, starting with John.
Aye.
Ernie,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
Stan,
Aye.
Mark,
Aye.
myself, Brad Chase, aye. All right, thank you all. We'll be on next week. Have a good night.
Thank